one warning I would give to that, which it's a great idea. It's a good idea. But what I often tell my creators and what I would hope that people would consider is that just because you wrote it in a fucking book, like in your notebook or whatever, does not make it canon. It's not canon. So if at some point you're like, you get to this spot in your story and you're like, actually, this would be a way better direction for this character, cool. Change the fucking bio. Like, change the bio. But so many people keep themselves beholden to those notes. And they go, no, this is stone. And I'm like, no, it's not.
Yeah.
This is stone.
That's a great point, Chuck. I see it constantly. They won't swerve. You can give them R&D that's very valuable, that you earned hard, hours a day out there watching what people are doing. You could pass that information on to, I'm sticking to my thing. I'm not going to sell out. No. And they don't understand that's not selling out.
Yeah, it isn't.
Especially when it comes down to quality, in elements of quality. Like, let's say your collars aren't, sorry, I'm from Appalachia. We don't say the word collar, right? But
I'm Canadian. We don't either. We don't even spell it right.
I feel that, And, so basically, let's say the collars aren't that great, and I tell them, I say, man, like, for example, I'm a part of the Comicsgate community, and Comicsgate cares about top quality. These Comicsgate backers want the best quality books possible. They want the popping colors. They want the high detail art. And I'm telling some buddies of mine, I'm like, man, you need to step up that game a little bit. See, it's easy for me to say because I'm hiring the top tier artists instead of being the artist myself. These guys are working at it to be their own artist. But to me, almost in a way, it's kind of hubris. Because I want to produce the best possible book that I can produce. And I want to produce the book that I want to walk in a comic book store and see. And if it's not my art, it's got to be somebody else's art. That's the bottom line. Art sells the book first, and then the story and the characters keeps people coming back for the next books.
Yep.
Yes.
And, quality first and all that other emotional bullshit second.
Yep.
Exactly.
It is like, I do agree with that too, Chuck. Because like, even though I do have this full-on character profile that I do, there have been characters where I get to a certain point, I'm like, okay, I leave them fluid. Like, that's my base.
Yeah.
But I leave it fluid because they might actually act different in that situation.
Yes.
And that's still, if you're looking at human interaction, where one person, their life may have been taking them to this one point, and then all of a sudden they get there and they're like, I'm gonna go this way. I'm gonna go left instead of right. And it's natural to have that fluidity. And I have seen people, like you said, they'll see something like, that's not how that person would do it. And it's like, but maybe something happened that made them change, And
if it did, let's try to bring that up and explain it.
Exactly.
Certainly.
Exactly. Like explain what got them there.
Yeah.
That's what in the beginning of this whole event, the first person that we had on, we were talking about kind of character building a little, and Dylan brought up that we added a brand new character to the Seer Chronicles that I didn't even think of adding, and we made a whole bio, like what you guys are talking about. Like, we made a whole bio, like why he's the way he is, and I was like, oh, well, that's great, because that's exactly how he's going to act now on whatever he had to deal with throughout life. So,
some of the better advice I think I could probably offer right now on character building has came through my process of working on Gun Demon, is working with really experienced and talented artists that have really great vision. I don't go into complete detail on my characters. I give them as much as they need to get in the close neighborhood of the character. And then I let these guys do their magic. Like Sed Nokon is, he did the cover for my book, and Sed is an amazingly detailed artist. He's really great, very action-packed. And I can't wait to show this cover. Paul Billick is collaring it right now. So once it's done collared, that's when I'm going to start showing it. I'm going to launch my mailing list. But, Sed and I created together what I consider to be the coolest looking monstrous villain I've ever seen. And, and a lot of that had to do with me basically giving him my vague vision. And, well, it wasn't that vague, to be honest, but he went way beyond it. I see a lot of other creators out there hiring really talented guys. or gals, really talented artists, but they're not really fully making use of these guys' talents because they'll tell them in every detail exactly how they want it done. And honestly, just because you're the creator doesn't mean you're the best guy to visually design your character.
Exactly.
It's bigger than you, and that's what people need to learn in these indies right now that I'm seeing. It's so much bigger than you if you're doing it right.
Yep. Because I know, like, for me, with my artist teams, I give them what I like to call artistic ring, and I tell them all the time, I'm like, I'm giving you the script, but if you get this script and you start drawing, you're like, that's not going to work like that. Let me know, present it to me. And there's been many a times where I wrote something in the script. I sent it to the artist. They look at it and they're like, I think it's too many panels, or I think you need more panels, or I think, we should do this. Instead of doing worm's eye here, we should do bird's eye, or we should do one panel, or, just all these different things. And it helps. It makes the book that much better. Because I have seen some individuals where they're like, no, you're going to do it the way I want it. And that's it. And it's like, okay, then you're looking at it from a writer point of view, and your artist is telling you no. And then your letter is like, that's not going to work.
Right? They want to be the dude, man.
Yep, exactly.
That epine is important to some, they gotta, I get it if it's your goal in life. Yeah. I do get that. If it's your passion in life doing that. But I would tell those types of artists, I would say, work harder, watch what the really great guys are doing and talk to them. Just all that stuff. I mean, there are certain things that these top artists are doing that most of the other artists aren't doing, and that's part of why they're top artists.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's a certain level of egotism where you come in and you go, no, it's got to be exactly like this, man. When you let or allow your artist to be able to kind of give their own flavor to a character, then what that does is that inspires you to take it to another level. So you guys are constantly building upon each other. It's like Jenga, only every time you pull a block out, it stays filled. And you're just building that tower bigger and bigger. And so, let's say you make this character and he's a really nerdy ass character, and then your guy's like, man, I drew him with a fanny pack. Yeah, you could go, nah, that's too fucking nerdy. Or you could go, what's in that fanny pack? What is he keeping in there? And so you're allowing
the story
him
behind it.
Exactly. And so you got to be open to that shit and willing to let them inspire you. It can't all come from you because you're one fuel source. But if your whole team is in on it, then it's so much bigger than just you.
Exactly.
Yeah, that cover. That cover set did for me was originally they were going to be on the street facing, the two characters on the cover fighting each other. He showed me the pencil layer, and it was them busting out of the side of a building, like 20 floors, above the ground. And I said, holy shit, this is so much better than what I imagined. So I changed my script.
Yeah, I've done that too. Like I get stuff from my letterer. Not my letterer, but I letter my books because I write. And the reason why I do that, since I write them, I also letter them, is mainly for this reason, because I was going to hire a letterer, but at one point my art team gave me the pages back and I looked at it and I'm like, wow, this is beautiful. That dialogue is not going to work. And I had to rearrange the entire dialogue to make it fit that, to make it actually fit that part. So I was like, okay, I'm just going to letter from here on out. And it's like both of you were saying, like, you'll see it and then you're like, man, the crap that I wrote, wow. That's gonna be lackluster. That does not go with this art at all.
Lettering can be tricky, man. That's why everybody hires Eric Weathers to do it.
It's funny when Ronnie came to me with Heavens Decoded and we were working on that. He had two artists that were kind of playing around with it and whatnot, and he talked to me about the two artists and he's like, I don't know what decision to make. And I said, no, Josh is your dude. Josh is your dude. But it wasn't simply because of Josh's art. It was also because Josh was passionately excited about it. He was already trying to add new things into it and throw new things. And I'm like, that's your motherfucker. That is the dude, because that guy is going to build it even more. He is going to make your job easier. Yep. So, like, get your ego, get out of the driver's seat. let this dude take the wheel now and then, because I'm telling you, and those two dudes have been insane. They'll fucking contact me every once in a while, and they'll be like, okay, we got this really cool idea, and I'm like, all right, hit me up, what's going on? And I take care of my other work, let them do their thing, and then they come back to me and they're like, all right, here's what we have. And for Ronnie, it's no longer here's what I have. It's here's what we have, because those two are a team now. And so you gotta work with your artists and work with whomever on the team is willing to jump in and do that shit, because it'll become so much bigger than the shit that was in your little head. You're just one dude.
That's definitely Michael. Yeah, it's definitely the creator starts the vision, and the artists bring it to reality. Basically, that's the way I see it. At least
I would say if you're an artist and you're working with a creator, and that creator doesn't allow you to think outside the box, it might not be a good. I mean, I guess it depends on the type of artist you are to, but it may not be the right creator to work with, especially if you're the type that has ideas. Because my art team has ideas, and I let them explore those ideas. Like I do bring them, like you said, the creator starts the vision, so I bring them the vision, and then when they see something, they might have an additional idea, or they might say, you know what'd be cool here? What if we had like one of the characters in the background doing something that, you know, goes with their character, you know, that background noise that a lot of people forget in the comics and stuff like that. So you're like, you can tell the front story, but then you have the characters in the back telling a totally different story as they're sitting there doing something. Maybe the nerd character is like, you know, perched on the desk, you know, playing with a Rubik's Cube, or, you know, throwing a piece of paper in the trash can. The athletic character is just throwing a piece of paper in the trash can. Small things like that. But the artist can add that stuff in to help build those characters and help build that character development. And now you're doing more as you build the world, and people are getting used to these characters and starting to understand these characters without them even saying anything. They don't even have to say dialogue. You know, they're just acting. People are like, oh, that's the nerd. Oh, okay, I get it. You know, so.
Well, that's what I was thinking, was just the collaborative side of it, is that, like, I love what you mentioned about, like, a lot of that stuff, the nerd in the background with the Rubik's Cube, that's not in the scripts usually. You know, usually it's like, oh, maybe this guy's here, we see some students in the background. Like, but like, yeah, that's the artist's job to be able to fill those gaps. And if the writer, as a writer, if you don't allow the writer or the artist to fill the gaps with these character traits, you know, these, like, I love going in and getting a script or getting a character design and going like, okay, I like this idea, and then I draw them out a few times, and it's like suddenly I'm like, why am I drawing it this way? The writer had no idea that we kind of come together again. It's like, wow, like that's the collaborative side of building a character. It's more than just, you know, he's tall, skinny, and wears a jacket. It's like, that's cool and all, but like the artist can come in and it's like, oh, maybe he's got a scar on his face, or maybe his pants are a little roughed up, like, and then maybe that doesn't fit in the writer's vision, but at least the artist came up with that idea and brought it forward. Suddenly you guys are, you know, throwing the ball back and forth. And if you can at least get through a few different versions, suddenly you come up with a brand new idea. And that's where the collaboration is just the best thing ever. It's just like a high.
Exactly, well, you know, and I see some of the comments too, and it's like, when you're collaboration doesn't mean you go the same, you go the same path. The artist say, here, what about this? You can still say no, like, no, let's stick to it. Like, but if they do bring you something good, like my artists have brought me good things, and sometimes they brought me things I'm like, nah, that's not gonna work. You know, let's try this. But that's the collaboration. You go back and forth, and then they come back like, okay, like this. You look at it like, okay, change this, but do that. Okay, yep, that works. That's collaboration.
Have a reason for your no.
Yeah,
you know when you say,
I don't like it.
Okay, so here's why. Or if you don't have a reason, then go, okay, well, I'm not sold. Let's keep that one up there for now, but let's keep trying, because I think there's a better idea. We just haven't found it yet. And, you know, people are usually pretty cool with that. Like, oh, okay, so my idea is good enough to go in the maybe pile, but, you know, we know that there's something better. And, you know, you're not telling them I'll come up with something better. You're saying we'll do something better. So, yeah, man.
It's a team effort. It's a team effort. When you got these teams, like, it's a team effort. You know, the creator is, I guess, the tip of the spear, but it's still a team effort. Like, the tip of the spear ain't going anywhere without the freaking rest of the spear and the shaft of the spear. You're just going to be there laying on the ground. Just being honest.
Yeah. Well, and for actual character building, when we're talking about character creation, there's so many different, people are trying to just pull stuff out of the aether, and it really doesn't work like that. There's certain inspirations. What personality styles does your world need? What different things do your does your main character need a foil? Do they need a villain? Do they need a partner or a sidekick? Like when I was making Belial, I was like, okay, so we have the original creator of Hell. He's kind of badass, but he's a lazy son of a bitch. He's been sitting around. He's been a has-been for millennia. So
he's bored with it all.
yeah. So there's got to be someone else, someone that can kind of add some excitement to this sort of morose motherfucker. And so I ended up, I was like, okay, I'm going to look up like other demons and look up maybe like smaller demons and all that kind of stuff. And I was like goblins and gremlins and all this shit. And eventually I got to imps. And when I looked up imps, I found this really cool, badass story from Lincoln in England. And they had this story where in the medieval days, their cathedral had been around for so long that they had this story from the medieval days. And what's neat is, rather than having gargoyles on all of their structures, they have imps. And the idea is they have this story that goes back to the medieval days where imps came up from hell and they were vandalizing the countryside and torching the fields and stuff, and they ended up breaking the glass, like throwing stone at the stained glass and all that kind of stuff. And an angel of the Lord leapt up from the Bible and started turning them all into stone. And as he's doing that, one of the imps picked up a rock and chucked it at the angel. And then, as the story goes, the angel turned him into stone. And I was like, no. This little son of a bitch, this little imp, knew that the angel was going to kick the shit out of him. Yeah. And he still was like, fuck you, I'm not afraid. I'm going to throw the stone at you. Yeah, exactly. And he picked a fight. I was like, that's a character. Yes. That is cool. And that became one of our breakout characters of the book, Link. And people love that guy. And that came from me doing some research, finding this super old, hard to find story, and just going, oh, wow, what a really neat thing. So, man, you can pull it from anywhere. Just realize what you need, what you're looking for, and then just start to play around and have some fun. Check out other mediums. Like, there's all sorts of things that you can do.
Yes, yeah. A lot of research. That's what I do a lot of too. Just like you're saying, a lot of research. Like, that helps out so much. And it doesn't, when you do this research, just like with how he did, you could have easily used the angel, but you was like, no, I want to use that little imp that threw the stone at the angel, because that's badass. Like, you're gonna die. That's like knowing you're gonna get hit by a car and throwing a stone at it. Like, there's really
no fear. He had no fear.
You're like, I'm not going out without a fight. Like,
I don't know if that's bravery. That sounds more like stupidity.
It is stupidity.
Delivered by the car coming at you. I'm not throwing a fucking stone at a car.
It really is stupidity.
I'm going to be a coward.
I
want to move.
But that's the cool part. I'm guessing from that character. I'm guessing that Link is probably, I haven't read the book. Now I want to pick it up, but I'm guessing he's probably a wild and crazy character.
He is a wild and crazy character that is afraid of nothing. Yep. At one point, Belial, who is the original creator of Hell, ends up punching out War. And immediately, Link jumps on him. He's like, that's what's up, bitch. You didn't do anything, man. And this is War. War swats him away like a fucking fly, which he is. But Link's not afraid of anything, and he has no right to have that level of confidence. And so it's hilarious, it's fun, it's something new to play with, and so you never know when that inspiration is going to hit you. So you need to understand the kinds of characters you're looking for, the kinds of things that will add to your story and really build that world up and that group of characters up.
Well, yeah, speaking of group of characters, I mean, right there, you have the stupid character with no fear. Like, I always recommend to writers, if you're having trouble, you got your ensemble, but just things aren't really jiving. Like, it's really good to know what tropes are. Like, it's good to not just plug and play and then go with it. Like sometimes it is good to do it, but then add on to it. But like have your dumb character, have your smart character, have your silly character, figure those out and then start building on top of it. It's good to like understand those tropes. They really do help build a foundation if you're having issues or trouble, or it might give you a good idea, some random character.
Yep. Yep.
I start very generic with my characters anyways. I look at what role I want them to fill. I created Gun Demon before I created Celestian, and it was through that process of starting to create Celestian, who was originally going to be a support character. I realized Celestian was really cool. So, he was more of the main guy. So that's what made me change my approach to everything, was I just felt like, and that's another thing too, I'd like to talk about for a minute here. I'm sure you guys will have some input on this as well, is something I don't hear many people talk about, which is story approach. Everybody will, like, you look online, I hate to use the word everybody. A lot of these people online writing articles and such, they'll tell you, don't do this, don't do that, don't use narration, don't do blah, blah, don't add dates to your story. And, that's really moronic advice. It really comes down to your approach. Yeah. My first book is going to be Gun Demon, and that's Gunny's story. And because of his story and the nature of it, it needs to have a narrative. And it's narrated by somebody who cares for Gunny, because there's this endearing story going on here. There's tragedy, there's sadness, there's different things. It's mostly a fun book, an action-packed book, but I needed somebody who cared about Gunny to narrate it. But the next book, which continues the story, which will be Celestian #1, Celestian will be the protagonist, and the approach will be completely different. There will be no narrative. It'll be like your typical comic book, where you've got the rectangular bubble that says, New York City evening, your headers and that kind of stuff, because that story calls for it. Using narration in the wrong story where it doesn't fit is what's wrong about using narration.
Yeah. Because every story doesn't call for it. Just like I've seen some stories where people will use like, the action words and stuff like that, kablam, and it's all huge, and it's like, that doesn't fit this story. Or to be like a totally different color that just doesn't work for that story.
The most important thing about storytelling, which a lot of people forget, is motivation. Yes. First off, why are you even making the fucking story? But then constantly you should be asking yourself, why am I doing this? Why are we doing narration? Why are we using those weird lettering? Why is it color? Why is it black and white? Why any of this shit? Why do I have this character? The more you're asking yourself why, and the more often you're giving yourself real, definite, honest answers rather than it's cool, then at that point, you're really going to be creating substance. All of these things need reasons. Look, narration's not bad. It can be fucking trope as shit and dumb. But if you've got a good reason for it, say, oh, well, I'm doing narration because it turns out that this is all a diary that he's telling himself that, and we're going to pick that up as we learn. Oh, great. That's really cool. That makes perfect sense. That helps us an awful lot. Now we know that he's telling his story. Terrific. So, you need that. You need to understand that shit. So we need to kind of understand why that's happening. So constantly ask yourself, why? Why am I doing this? Why does this guy have a gun bigger than his own head? Well, he's really into big guns, or it turns out that what he's killing requires that kind of huge weapon, so to speak. Thanks, New Leaf. I appreciate that. So yeah, man, like, you just always consider those whys. If it's just for cool sake, that shit is going to get old quick. It's why we have a lot of these trends. Like in the 90s, they had the big tits and the big guns and all that kind of shit. And then eventually it was like, but why are you doing that? Yeah. What is the point of that?
Other than the fact of it looking cool.
Yeah, right? And looking cool is all well and good. But if it looks cool and it has substance, oh shit. Then that's something. Yeah, exactly. And that's where your needle needs to be pointed at. Cool and substance together, you're solid.
Yep. Yeah, I keep seeing books out there that look pretty good, and I'm interested in backing them. And then I talk to the creator, and they don't really have any story. It's just a straightforward, my character looks cool. He's going to kick some ass. This is the cool looking bad guy. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting here thinking, well, the thing is backing is different from buying. When you walk in a comic book store, you can just spontaneously buy something. It's $2, $3. Backing, I'm typically backing stuff that's $40, $50 with shipping and everything in total. So I want to back something that I'm investing in. I'm voting with my wallet that hopefully will become successful, and in the future I can watch movies of it. And so that's one thing I'm making sure to establish with my books. I've got a lot of story planned. There's an overall story. It's going to go through different characters' books. It starts with Gun Demon, then it goes to Celestian, then it goes to my character Archivist. And he's sort of like my wizard in my world, but it's nanotechnology in his body that gives him the powers. It just appears to be magic. In fact, the log line is, there is a word for technology that is not understood. That word is magic. And cool. So I've got all these different characters. They're going to end up meeting, in a superhero team eventually, and as well as with characters from those other creators I mentioned vaguely earlier. So we're leading up to all that. Every character, we all agreed on this shared universe. Our approach is going to be that we're going to establish each character as its own living, breathing being, and give it real story and really great depth. Each has its own unique origin story, its own role in the world. They're all tied into major events in the world. And we've got an event. Well, I've got actually 3 major events planned, but I don't want to do like Marvel and DC did and go crazy with events. It's going to be like once a year on sort of mid-level events, and then every couple years on big, massive cosmic event, something like that. You know how Adam Warlock was the protagonist in the Infinity Gauntlet books. We're making sure all of these characters have their tie-in with different events and major storylines.
Yeah. To answer Hector's question, do any of you guys encourage storyboarding to enhance the process? So as an editor and as a writer, I don't encourage it. Now, I'm not against it, but the reason I don't encourage it is because of that inspiration we were talking about earlier in this panel. I feel like if I create those storyboards, then my artist might feel beholden to my take on it and feel like I have to draw it kind of in the same style I did, and I don't want them to feel that way. So really, I kind of try to, I panel everything out. So, my pages look like page 5, 4 panels, blah, 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 blah. And I write it in a way that is detailed enough that you have a good idea of what I'm looking at. And every once in a while, I might be like, this panel needs to be the width of the page. I try not to do that too often unless it's really important. So I don't want to give them too much because I want them to be able to put their spin on it and take it to a whole other level. No. I'm not against it. I'm just not for it.
Yeah, it sounds like you and I do the same
point.
Thing.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, Chuck, it sounds like you and I do the same thing. Cause like, even with me, when I write my scripts, I do that. Some like I do the same thing. Page 5, panel 1. This is what happens. Panel 2. This is what happens. And sometimes I leave it simple. And then sometimes I will get in depth where I'm like, bird's eye view, main character standing on top of a building, but the reader is looking down on top of them, just like in my Almost Stigmata issue 2 book. And I had this page where it had to be that specific because the antagonist was sitting down on top of a building. She could open portals and stuff like that. And she's sitting down on top of a building. You're looking down at her. And then all of a sudden, like all the panels are pretty much bird's eye. And you actually just see her do this free fall into a portal, and yeah, I do the same thing. The way that I and my artists work, we don't do storyboarding because I personally, I don't know. This is me. I personally think it's double work. That's what I think. I get why people do it, but I personally think it's double work.
That comes from a practical reason for not writing or not drawing a storyboard really as well that maybe many wouldn't consider. And that is, I'm a visual artist. So this is why I consider it. Is each artist is really great at drawing certain things. Like there are some rare artists that can just do anything, but some are really great at specific things and kind of weak in other areas, right?
Yeah.
So if you're giving them the control over how they're going to do the sequentials, they're going to draw it in the way that they're going to be able to do it the strongest. So if you've got a Lee field, for example, that sucks at feet, and you give him the opportunity to set up the page, he's not going to put feet in there, right?
He's not.
That's an example.
Exactly. Yeah, because like what I do with my artists, like we'll go through the sketch. So we'll do the panels and they'll do the sketches, and then I'll look at it and we'll go over the sketches and we're like, okay, tweak this here, tweak that there, and we'll do all of that because my artist goes from sketch to ink. I know some people do, sketch, storyboard pencil inks or sketch pencil inks. Like my artist goes straight from sketch to ink. So that
why would you do otherwise? I don't understand why anybody would do otherwise.
Well, and I see those sketches as the storyboards. Those roughs are in a lot of ways kind of the storyboards. So then we can go, okay, cool. Let's nix this one or play around with that one or do something different or whatever. And so that's your chance to catch it. So I mean, in a way, we're storyboarding it. It's certainly a lot easier if you're, say, the writer artist. If you're both, then it's easier for you to be able to play with that kind of stuff and do it. But for me, in my head, I feel like I already have to know where my page turns are, what the page is generally going to look like. I feel like I have to pace it so that if you understand the pace that I'm creating, then you can add to it and build upon that pace that's been made.
Exactly. It's funny to say real quick was the funniest thing is that like how quickly we get into our processes and storytelling, it reflects so well. And just what we said at the beginning was character building is storytelling. Yeah. It's how quickly we just all our conversations, exactly. They turn into storytelling. And that's the biggest takeaway I think from this entire panel is if you feel like you sit down and you create this character and stuff and you go through the story, it's like the character is the story, and that's what's interesting, and that's why storytelling and character building can be practically synonymous.
Yeah, it's funny. I had I was a part of a panel not too long ago, and this younger girl, she asked a question. She said, "I'm making this 200-page graphic novel with 35 characters. What do you think?" And I was like, "Why are you doing that?" And she was like, "Well, because I'm really excited about that." And I'm like, "Man, don't stop giving yourself those numbers, man. Yeah, that shit is gonna drive you insane. Create something that works, build it, make it happen. If you end up with 200 pages and 35 characters, then that's where you end up. But don't make that the goal.
Don't make that the goal.
I think if you're gonna go for a graphic novel, you should shoot for 48. Yeah, fit your story in 48 personally.
Yeah, because I know, for me, like. I don't even set a page when I write, and a lot of people will call me crazy for it because I do floppies. And you guys, Greg, he's read Triple High. Triple High is long, and you almost think about issue 2 is like 40 pages of story, but it's a floppy because I start writing, and then I'm like, oh, okay, you get brought into that building of that world. I try not to do 20. I do 24 here and there, but I get what you're saying. Like, don't set yourself with that goal. Like, oh, this is exactly how it's going to be because you never know what's going to come from it.
I'm glad I set my goal because my story would probably be a mess right now. Otherwise, I have a lot of story. I had to cut about 60% of it.
Oh, in the final edits, it makes sense.
And that's going to be spread out anyways in later books. But 48 is plenty to tell a really good story. You got character developments, and all that in there. And
yeah, it should be. And something that people need to consider also is that, like, my stories are usually for my floppies around 20 to 24, but the reason for that is budgetary. Yeah. I know how much, okay, I have to set aside this much money, and I don't have the cash for 48, so I'm gonna make my 24. I'm gonna make it make sense in that, and then move on. So that's a whole other animal. But yeah, man, I mean, when you're doing those things, you always ask why. I think that's the most important part of comic creation, whether you're building characters, you're building the world, you're building whatever. First off, it's not set in stone until you printed it.
Yep.
Second, why the fuck are you doing it? If you could take away 2 things from this, those should be the 2 biggest. Yep. And from there, all the rest of what these guys are saying, awesome.
Yep.
Yeah. So
we went over time. Oops.
That's fine because I told the guy, I was like, I'll send you the link in a second. And he's like, oh, I'm just listening to you guys talk anyway.